Okay, welcome everybody and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our lunchtime session, Food for Thought. This is actually an international lunchtime discussion, which is very exciting. Just a couple of housekeeping points before we get going. If you can keep your microphones on mute and your cameras off throughout, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you have any questions throughout the session, please ask them via the chat box. So I'm now going to hand you over to John Mcgill from the UK Innovation Corridor, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Thank you, Jasmine. And again, welcome everybody to this session of Food for Thought. It is a lunchtime session for most of us, but not everyone on this panel, as you'll hear. So again, just to repeat, my name is John Mcgill. I work for a partnership called the UK Innovation Corridor, which links London to Cambridge. I'm actually speaking to you from the said Innovation Corridor, so I'm just at the edge of London, actually just in Essex, to be absolutely precise. I'm really pleased to be chairing this session because it's a fascinating topic, and I get a front seat to be amongst and hopefully talk to or share a conversation with our really fascinating panel. I've had the privilege of having a pre-meet with most of them last week, and we had a really interesting discussion. And if we can replicate that, I think everybody in the audience will enjoy it and get quite a lot from it. So in terms of the introductions, in a moment, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and obviously say their name, where they're speaking from, and also their role in the talent and skills supply chain. So by way of doing that, I've already said who I am and I've told you where I'm speaking from. So in terms of the partnership I work for, what we do is that we bring together local authorities, universities, colleges, and businesses. But we don't have a direct responsibility in putting people into jobs. What we do is to convene, make sure there is an interchange of information, and try and position people so that relationship can be more productive in terms of getting the right people into the right jobs. So with no further ado, Jasmine's already said about any questions from the audience to put in the chat, and I certainly see that as a measure of our success if we can engage the audience and get them saying things. And that might be because we've said something that's outrageous, or it might be something you agree with. Hopefully we'll get a bit of both. And then we'll have quite a rich conversation. And in the 55 minutes or so we've got, hopefully you'll get a lot out of it. So in no particular priority order, I'm going to ask Christian to introduce himself, and then I'll come to the rest of the panel. Christian.
Hello, my name's Christian Parker. I'm currently talking to you from Basel in Switzerland, right on the edge of Switzerland, actually. So from my window, I can see both Germany and France. I've come there via the US and England before growing up in Scotland. I'm here actually representing the Society for Laboratory Automation and Screening. It's an organization that I volunteer for as the European ambassador, and we're involved in helping and supporting scientists on a global basis. And in my daytime job, I'm actually involved in the lab, leading a discovery team looking for new targets or new leads for the pharmaceutical industry.
Thank you, Christian. And then I'm going to come to Ashley.
Thank you, John. Hey, good morning, everybody. I am coming to you from Raleigh, North Carolina. I work for Wake County Economic Development. We are a county in the Research Triangle region of North Carolina. In my role, I oversee all of the business recruitment and expansion for our area. So obviously, as a part of that, one of the things that we're selling when we're talking about the Research Triangle and Wake County in particular is our highly skilled talent, but our ability to recruit highly skilled talent to our area and grow talent as well. So we get pretty deep into talent development and recruitment through our work. But nice to be with you. What is this morning for me, this afternoon for I think most of you all. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Ashley. We were very cruel to Ashley and having this at such an unearthly hour for her, but she's done really well. So we'll move on to Lucy.
Yeah, hello, hi, my name is Lucy Robertshaw. I am a British expat now of 9 years, originally from Manchester in the UK. I have a background of healthcare, pharmaceuticals, life sciences, and within the last 2 years of working within the medtech space. I started my own consultancy company 9 years ago doing international business development within the UK, helping connect people with Scandinavia and Scandinavian businesses connect with the UK. And I'm very passionate about being able to keep the ecosystem for talent and also the international network going. So that's why I'm interested to have a global aspect on this today.
Thank you, Lucy. And last but by no means least, I'll come to Thomas.
Yes, good afternoon, oder guten Tag, as we say in Germany. So I'm German. I'm Thomas, working for Morphosis. Morphosis AG is a MDAX and Nasdaq listed biotech company, which is on the step to become more and more biopharmaceutical. So we are in Morphosis completely focused on developing technologies and we are on the kind of a mission to make exceptional, innovative biopharmaceuticals to improve the lives of patients suffering from serious disease. We are completely focused on cancer currently, so we are now 27 years old, so with a strong history. But last year in the US, we were able to launch our first real product, and so this is the reason why we are in a kind of a transformation currently from a biotech company to a more and more fully integrated biopharmaceutical. My background, unfortunately, is not life science. So I joined the industry even 3 months ago, but we will have later on a discussion about the about all the challenges we are facing currently in the industry, a really, really nice industry. My background is communication science, but I'm focused on talent acquisition and employer branding stuff. So that means that we are recruiting more than 150 people with different life science, biology, and so on backgrounds. So yeah, I'm really much looking forward on the conversation, and over to you, John.
Great, thank you. And it's quite an interesting spectrum across the supply chain, if I can use that phrase, of getting skills and talent into the workforce. So I'm going to ask Ashley to start off with, because Ashley, the Research Triangle, did a report last year on triangle talent, I think you called it. Just say a few words about that, Ashley, as a way of kind of understanding what businesses need and some of the issues. And if I understood it correctly, that was produced towards the beginning of last year, right? I mean, I know it mentions COVID, but obviously, well, I say obviously, I ask you to comment on this, whether we really understood, how deep we'd get into or the effects of the pandemic. Sorry, I'm waffling a little bit, but just say a little bit about what you did, why you did that report, and what it's doing for you in terms of providing talent.
Yeah, well, first I'll speak to the timing. I wish that the time that you laid out was right, but actually we launched the survey the same day that we were told we're in a pandemic, go home. Schools are closed. We're not going to be in work for a few weeks. So what we thought originally was a great timeline. We'll do this survey in the spring and we'll be ready for data release in the summer. It seemed like a disaster at the time. And just to speak a little bit about what the survey is, and then I'll come back to the timing because it's interesting. We actually did the survey for the first time in 2017. And I mentioned in my introduction that obviously understanding talent needs is equally as important as sort of that development and attraction piece. We're fortunate that we have a lot of education institutions in the Research Triangle. We also have a number of sort of workforce support organizations, I'll call them, what we call workforce boards, also our community colleges, and then our K through 12 school system are all partners of ours. And what we were finding in sort of the 2016 timeframe, we were seeing a lot of growth. We've been growing pretty consistently for a long time. And we were trying to understand our role in that is from a talent development standpoint. And we were all just kind of bumping into each other, you know, kind of all working towards the same goal of growing really rightly skilled talent. We had been doing talent attraction for a long time as well. So what we decided to do, since we're already partners, was to sort of level set and put the question back out to the businesses and ask, you know, not what do you need right now? And that's the problem that we always find, is that data is lagging. You can trend any number of reports, but by the time you get the data in the report, it's really outdated. I mean, talent needs change constantly. So the survey itself, and I'll put a link in the chat to it if anybody would like to take a look at the outcomes of the survey. It asks businesses, what are you going to need in the next 3 years? And this is from a technical skills perspective, a soft skills perspective, which I know that has a lot of different definitions, but also how are you recruiting and sourcing talent? And I'll tell you that original survey really revealed what we thought we knew, which was a disparity in terms of how talent was recruited. The number one way that talent was being sourced, as reported by these businesses, and we received over 700 responses, was through friends and networks. Well, if you're not a friend and you're not in the network, what are your chances of getting the job? So that speaks to that equity and that inclusion piece that we have been trying to focus on for a number of years. So that was actually a data point that was uncomfortable to reveal, but has really charted our course in terms of equity in talent strategies. So we did the survey again in 2020, and obviously we launched it and the world, you know, collapsed basically. So we paused it. We said, you know, let's kind of let this at the time, you know, we didn't know how long this was going to last, sort of play out. So we picked it back up again in the summer and basically held it open in the summertime. And if you'll remember, in the summer, we had a better indication that this probably wasn't going away anytime soon. There was going to be a vaccine. So we knew a lot more then, though I don't think anybody thought we'd all still be sitting, you know, I'm in my dining room right now. A year later, at least I didn't. But what happened was we came out of that being the only sort of group that had pandemic related data. So businesses answered those questions understanding we were in a pandemic that may not lift for some time, and it was going to have real impacts to their business and how they conduct business in the future. So the data that we got in 2017 definitely charted a course for us, not just related to diversity and inclusion, but just talent development in general. And I will say, having the data that we have now that was collected in the middle of a pandemic has been hugely helpful for all of our workforce providers. And we continue to evaluate that data, make sure that we are organizing around really high need sectors like IT and also construction and skilled trades. So it's the foundation of everything that we do from a talent perspective now. And I'll put it in the chat.
That's great. And so I started with you because obviously not everybody's in a position on this call to do the kind of work. It's not your role. But I'm really interested in you know, the other panelists, Lucy, Thomas, and Christian, but how you may not have that kind of publication in your area, But I, you know, from what Ashley's described, hopefully you'll understand what it's about and what it's doing. I suppose my question is do you relate to that in terms of sourcing talent? Does a business go to that kind of compendium? Would it engage with that in their local area? And people who sort of network through the ecosystem, such as Lucy and Thomas, yeah, how do you relate to that? How do you try and connect people and source talent if it's outside of the kind of framework that Ashley's describing? Sorry, I was let me be very unfair and unkind. Thomas, let me come to you first of all.
No worries. Thanks a lot. I think there's no problem if you start with Lucy or Christian or me. So yeah, of course we are facing the same challenges all over the world. So we try, so when I have a look on the sourcing perspective, so one challenge we currently have, especially in the German market, because Morphosis is on the one hand side in Germany, close to Munich, and on the other hand side, we have a strong Inc. founded in the US. So it is our strong roots. We have the challenge that due to kind of German labor law and stuff like that, we normally you have to work, if you work for a German company, you have to live in Germany. Yeah? We have all this visa stuff and so on. And when it comes to sourcing, it limitates us a bit, because normally we are a very international company. We are hiring people from all over the world, but these people are not allowed to remove to Germany for different reasons. It depends on the country, it depends on EU, it has something to do with the Brexit and so on. There are different reasons for that. So the solution for us now, to be honest, is focusing on the EU market, which of course limitates you in finding the right talents in our life science business. So just to make sure that these people are allowed from a legal perspective to work with us. On the other hand side, my experience the last 3 months in Morphosis was the people are more and more not able or not willing to remove. So when we are speaking with talents from, I don't know, from India or from Spain or from UK, wherever in the world, or from US, mostly they say, okay, yes, I'd like to work remote for you, but removing to Germany is not on my list currently, and so on and so on. And I think it is also something to do with the current situation on the one hand side, but maybe it might also be an outcome of all the new work discussions we have in general around in the HR business.
That's great. Lucy, what's your experience?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm very much for global. I'm a entrepreneur. I have been working from home now for 9 years, and I believe that there is technology out there that actually we can work virtually. The last year with the corona situation has obviously shown that people can actually work virtually. Yes, okay, we are going to actually have to physically meet again, but what can we learn from the last 12 months, and what technology is there out there, say virtual reality, you know, kind of global team get together? I think it's also the fact that what does the person want? You know, there's the company, but actually the talent. What is the talent? Who's within that talent's family setup? Can they even afford where their job is going to be? And is there a housing stock even for them to move into? You know, there's a bigger picture here for the global talent or the companies that are actually where they're located. And that's what I'd like to debate, really, to say, you know, there's a very old way of looking at this, but actually what is the new way? Because I don't know whether people are really going to move and be so mobile anymore.
Yeah, so I think you're picking up a little bit what Thomas was saying, that people are a bit more reluctant. If I've read you correctly, Thomas, you're saying that over the last 3 months, possibly a bit more, people have been a bit more reluctant to say they've moved.
It's not just the 3 months, because I was starting Morphosis 3 months ago, but in general, I would say it started 2 years ago.
Right. Okay. So it's pre-pandemic then. Okay. And Christian, you're at the sharp end of running a business, and I know you had some views on how much virtual working or the limits of virtual working. Do you want to say something about that?
So I'm not actually running a business. I run a lab, and as I said in the introduction, we're predominantly focused on identifying new lead compounds or targets for pharmaceutical discovery. And because of that, it's mostly lab work that we're doing. We generate knowledge, we generate information that can be turned into knowledge, and that requires a physical lab. And actually, my group spends most of its time in the BL2 facility. So, we come to work, we change into our lab coats, we then go to the BL2 facility and we get changed all over again to spend however long we can stand without needing a drink or going to the toilet, because it's another 20 minutes to get changed and get back out. So for us, location and the physical presence is essential. I think Lucy brought up a number of good points, especially about, can people find a place to live? Can they afford it? All of those issues. But to Thomas's point, I mean, Switzerland, by contrast to Germany, is extremely, how can I put it, flexible, and because of that, cosmopolitan. So we constantly have to face the issues of getting extra visas for people, even outside of the Schengen area. So, as a US citizen, I have to apply for the privilege to work here, just like anybody else. And we have cross-border people who are working every day and living in France or Germany. So it is possible. And I think it comes down to countries and cities making the decision that they want to be a place that people can work. And, Munich's a beautiful city. You just have to adapt.
Yeah, thank you. And just coming around full circle to Ashley on that one. So the US, it's a big country, but it is one country. I guess movement of people has been quite commonplace. Are you finding that that's, over the last year, or as Thomas suggests, maybe even before that, any reluctance of people to relocate from, say, Silicon Valley to North Carolina or different parts of the US?
We actually see the opposite. I think that the growth that we see is probably not seen all over the US. We are a really fast growing metro area, similar to the growth that is being seen in Austin, Texas, as an example. Our stats and our growth rates are actually pretty similar to Austin as a comparison. Our region, we attract a lot of talent from Silicon Valley, actually, but really most of our migration comes from the northeast of the United States, so from the New York area, and it's a great place to live here in Raleigh. Obviously, I'm biased as I sit here, but it is a great place to live. We have a good climate year round, but the cost of living is still below the national average here. So you combine a place where you can work at some really great companies, as we've been successful with our company recruitment, with a place that you can actually afford to live and raise your family. And it becomes a pretty attractive proposition for people who have maybe been priced out of their markets. And I think that's really the movement that we're seeing, is sort of that pricing out, forcing people to move. Now, along with those movers, we see our own cost of living increasing, but it's not escalating at a pace that is out of control, but we will continue to increase in our cost of living. And so We'll see what happens with that, but we are a long, long way from having the same cost of living as a San Francisco area or New York. So I think we'll continue to see that migration. And just to put it in numbers, we actually grow by 64 people a day just in Wake County, 109 people a day in the Research Triangle region. Of the 64 people who are moving to Wake County, 22 of them are moving. So we grow essentially by what we say a kindergarten class a day. And we use these stats to talk about how we have to grow smartly and be making good, solid infrastructure decisions as we manage the growth.
Yeah, I'm going to come to Lucy, because Lucy has sort of given us a little glimpse, perhaps, of what.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about the opportunities for outsourcing as well, because you know, we don't have a very ecosystem that stays very stagnant for very long. It is very secular. So the pharma business 5 years or 10 years ago went through the downsizing and threw a whole load of people out from AstraZeneca. And then there was the outsourcing economy. Now, if you have the outsourcers that have the actual equipment that you need to do that work, but if they can actually then attract their own talent in that location, I'm just kind of thinking that what is the next 5 to 10 years of what is the real requirement, and what's the business case is going to look like for this as well.
So is that your sort of glimpse into a different future then, Lucy? That the model where
I think we have to
businesses
be smart.
are static and you recruit into that?
I think global business has to be very smart in the fact that we have to be adaptable. And I think also the last 12 months has taught everybody that we have to be adaptable and to choose what we want to do, and to be in a state that you can move, or you have the ability to be able to do stuff if you need, and where your job and where the money comes from. So I think what you're saying there is that businesses need to be agile. Will the workforce reflect that or move with that? I mean, it's that sort of stickiness where, and whether you know, it's interesting what Thomas said earlier. He's not seeing this reluctance as a totally new thing. It's not particularly pandemic related. So I just wonder what, particularly Christian and Thomas, who are more aligned to specific businesses, what your comments on that. So you could have businesses moving, but whether the people would follow them, or whether they just attract new talent in whichever area they find themselves.
I mean, if I can jump in, I mean, in my career, I've had to move 7 times. And I think if you're working in the pharmaceutical industry, there are so few centers with the critical mass of jobs and opportunities. You have to move. So, you know, I've moved 3-4 times in the States and twice within Europe. And I don't see that really changing.
Thomas, what do you think about that?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yes and no. So I think from my experience in the last years, I worked for not just for pharmaceutical companies, also for in the IT business and comparable businesses. So my experience is that I think especially the target group, so the experienced target group, so meaning people with 5 to 10 to 15 years of work experience, are becoming more and more unflexible. They have, I don't know, they've founded a family, they build a house and stuff like that, and they had a lot of job opportunities in their area, so they do not have the need to move. And this is a kind of a trend I experienced the last, I would say 5 years. So that these, and this is our main target group. So what we are focused in morphosis, and this is one of our challenges as well. We are unfortunately not focused on graduates and postdocs and younger candidates. We are more and more focused to replace our, I don't know, someone has resigned on an associate or director level, and we try to find a successor for him or for her. So we are mostly looking for experienced people, and this is one of our challenges currently when they are not that flexible.
Yeah, so again, I'm making this, well, perhaps I'm not making an assumption because I'm repeating what you said. So it sounds very much like you're a particular segment in the labour force, which is seniority, both in terms of age and also in terms of their level within the organisation. And it's possible, I mean, this is a bit I'll throw out there, that at different stages in their career, people may be a lot more flexible and a lot more mobile. But actually, you know, I wonder whether this was true of Christian when in his younger days, whether that was partly what drove him to move, you know, just the adventure. And that is the spirit of this 2-day conference, you know, the adventure of the journey of a career rather than a series of jobs. Was that what your younger self was looking for, Christian?
I mean, I think I can reflect slightly what Thomas was saying. There was a time in Kalamazoo in Michigan where I was perfectly happy. I mean, we had a fantastic school for my daughter. I'm sure Ashley can relate. I mean, the schools in America can be absolutely outstanding. I mean, yeah, just a great place to grow a family. Yeah, the beach was only 20 minutes away for us, but you don't know if you want to go to the beach in Michigan in winter. But yeah, it was fantastic. So, and I had flexibility forced upon me because Pfizer decided to close us down. So that's life. Luckily, I was able to get another job in Boston, which was fun for a while, but I think it was even more fun here.
John, I wanted to add perhaps a different perspective. What we see with both companies who have located here for a first time or maybe they're homegrown here, it tends to come back to that question of culture. I feel like now more than ever, it is culture wars between these companies. And it was really interesting to see with the pandemic. I feel like, especially at technology companies, it was like letting the air out of the balloon a little bit because they're just doing all of these like crazy things to attract workers. And you'd go and tour the companies and you're like, you have 30 different kinds of milk in your refrigerator for employees, you know, coffee, like random stuff like that, but that sort of amounted to what people wanted, right? And I see companies, especially who have this, maybe not necessarily a global footprint, but maybe have a global approach to talent attraction, really struggling with that culture piece. And I think that's why we'll see companies come back in the office. I think everybody kind of agrees a hybrid approach moving forward is what we're going to see, but it's really hard to have a great culture if you're scattered all over the place and you're never working together in person or I think Lucy's even suggested some kind of like simulated version of that. And, you know, we get companies that sort of move here and they think, oh, we'll just move all of our folks from New York or Silicon Valley and we'll get up and running really quickly. And then they find, like Christian saying, they like where they live and maybe they don't want to move and they end up recruiting talent locally, and they're actually happier in that scenario because they have adapted to a local culture, but they've also built a culture within that office location. So I just throw that out there as another consideration as companies look to be successful in talent recruitment. People want to work somewhere that they enjoy being. And I see that driving people almost as much as salary. I mean, you see companies who have built really great cultures that becomes their destination workplaces. and they may not offer as much by way of compensation, but they're a great place to work.
I think also,
go on, Lucy. Yeah.
I think as humans, we're all very adaptable as well, actually. And the fact that, the last 12 months has made us adapt. And you would never have thought that we would be having a virtual conference online, being able to talk from different places in the globe. And, and it's worked, which is brilliant. So we are definitely an adaptable planet, because we don't know how long this is going to go on for, and what the ramifications of this are going to be.
Yeah, and I was interested in that word you used, Ashley, and sort of picking up on what Lucy just said, is this culture word. Not ignoring Christians' real need of, I'm sort of conjuring up this image of people who are all kitted out in their biohazard kit, or whether they're then desperate to go to the toilet but can't because they can't face getting changed again. Anyway, leave that thought where it is, because it probably wouldn't be helpful to go there. But acknowledging that there are jobs where you have to be where the the job is. I guess the question would be, what the balance is. But in terms of that word culture, I'm just wondering how companies create a culture if their workforce is distributed literally across the world. Part of the culture of an office, and some of it might not always be that pleasant, but these kind of these little routines that businesses go through to induct and make sure people are operating within the spirit of the company. I just wonder how much of that is possible virtually. Clearly, some of it is, but in terms of the imbibing the culture of the business, can that be done virtually, or is it just something that we'll adapt and find a better way of doing it as we go through this? I'm going to ask you, Lucy, because you're the big stalwart for the virtual and the new model.
I think that whatever we need, if we look at other industries, you can get a robot to deliver your package that you've ordered 24 hours ago, delivered right to your door. And it's a robot. They've got a thing set up in Milton Keynes where you can order something that gets delivered straight to your doorstep. So I think it's actually a plug the gap, this, in the fact that there's probably a lot of technology that we're not enabling because we don't know it's there, or there's not a gap that's been filled. And there's probably a big gap here for the life science to say, okay, these are our challenges. What can the electronics business or software industry help with to be able to have virtual teams? Otherwise, we are going to go back to nationalism. And is that good for the life science? And I come back to the fact that I want to be in this job because I care about patients. And I want to make sure that I'm doing as much as I possibly can for the fact that some patient in the world is going to be made better, or a better outcome. And we have to stay competitive, and we can't be enabling nationalism to come back into this industry, because I don't think it's really going to help.
I'd certainly applaud that, and I suppose just taking a slightly different direction in the conversation, but not completely, I hope, is this this sort of virtuous circle. I don't think it's an accident that where the participants are coming from reflects these centres of excellence, and it's that sort of old chestnut of which comes first, the businesses or the talent, and I guess it's a bit of both. So partly that's the story as I understand it in the research triangle of the universities taking a different turn. But if we're moving into a different world where that connection between the place where you go to work, or maybe you went to university and find a job and go to work, and kind of just and I exaggerate slightly to make the point, you could be anywhere. You could literally be anywhere working, on some element of the sector. Then really that's a challenge for the Cambridges and and the Bostons and these kind of places, and dare I say the research triangle, because it could really break that up and break that connection between where you need to be be in the right place to get the right jobs, but also the jobs need to be in the right place to get the right talent. So I see a comment, a question appeared on my screen, but then it disappeared before I had a chance to read it. So I'm going to ask Jasmine, who's in the wings there, to reflect on that. But I just wondered if anybody had thoughts on that. If the pandemic, and some of this may be temporary, some of it may be slightly longer living, some of it may be instigating changes which will be long lasting. What do people think about that potential break of the link between place and talent? Is that real? Should we be worried about that, or should we just think it's a good thing?
I think from my point, of course, that's real, because just to give you an overview, we and Morphosis are living in a hybrid world. So we have on the one hand side Christian, we do have a lot of people working in the laboratories. So we have labs, they have to be physically there. And we have, I would say, 30-40% of people who are of course completely able to work from home, as I'm doing currently. So and we do not have we have to have answers on that, how to deal with this special situation in the future. We invested in the last 12 months a lot in digitalization, so not just in software and stuff like that, also in processes. We digitalized our learning management platform, which is very important for the talents today, to have a proper learning management platform, a digital way of learning and so on. And we invested a lot of also in kind of digital team events and stuff like that, things we did in the past physically, celebrating Christmas, summer party and stuff like that. You're not allowed to do it, so you have to think about how to, from a cultural perspective, how to do it in the future. And of course, a digital party is not the same as an no. I think we all know, but it bounds the people a bit more to the company, and so you can try to transfer your culture from a physical culture to a virtual culture.
So I'm going to bring in a chat there. Sorry, I'm learning how to use Zoom after about a year of trying. So Steve Connolly, I think it's a really good point. I guess everybody can read it, but he's talking about scale up, and therefore you need dedicated plant with the expertise on hand. So he's suggesting that won't change much as we go forward. Hopefully that's reflected. I guess, well, what do people think about that? If you're scaling up, do you have to be on hand?
There's a very good example of this of Oxford Biotech and AstraZeneca, and how they managed to get the vaccine through, and the collaborators that they went with it, with Cobra Biologics and everybody. And they had a non-profit agreement, and they made the AstraZeneca vaccine go around, and it's in people today. And that's been in the last 12 months.
And I'm one of them. So you're saying, Lucy, that was all possible on a remote model rather than a kind of you have to be there to...
I'm saying that there's specific times and places when actually things can happen if you put your minds to it and actually get it to work as a business, because you actually have to think, what is the best case scenario for this?
I'll just add, just as a reminder, my role really revolves around business recruitment. So I'm always thinking through the lens of the list of companies that I have that have indicated that they might like a location where I work. And this is maybe where I also start to show my ignorance here, because I'm not a life science or biopharma practitioner. I'm just working with these companies and sort of making my own observations. But I see that industry being a few things. One, extremely demanding. I think everybody would agree with that. I mean, when you are facing product development, getting that product out, it seems very grueling and very demanding. I have seen, because I'm in the research triangle, you can't throw a stone without hitting someone who works at one of these companies. And I have a lot of friends who work in these industries. And, you know, through the pandemic, they have been back to work for a long time, but they also have been able to do some things virtually, which I think is new and maybe what Steve is alluding to. So they have a little bit more of a balanced life, in my opinion, now than what they had before the pandemic, which I think hopefully is something that these companies can continue to embrace and adopt, because I do think that's ultimately what people want. I think, though, from what I see in terms of business recruitment, these companies are very place-based, and that has not shifted at all during the pandemic. Our list of life science companies considering a location has only accelerated, and a lot of that is due to COVID, right? For the first time, we're really embracing and creating a whole new sort of product line around a new thing, COVID in this example. So I don't see that trend right now shifting away from companies moving to a location where they can have people working, producing, and on site. I think for now, my hope and my observation is they've become a little bit more flexible in what seemed like an industry that had no flexibility before all of this. So how that changes and evolves over time, we'll see, but that's my observation.
And I see Lucy agreeing with that. I think that's reassuring. So again, let me just take a slightly different topic on this, and just going back to this sort of stratification of careers. So Thomas, as he said, he's working at that more senior level. What about the young people coming into jobs? You know, we touched on culture. That's one particular, could be an aspect. But I mean, one reads that one of the problems about the pandemic is that, or remote working, you know, driven by the pandemic, is that it's okay if you're an older person, you kind of know how work works, you know all of those routines. But if you're a young person, you know, apprentice, first job, second job, that becomes a real problem. You know, in this world we're in at the moment, and one that may go on for quite a while. How do we handle that? How do we make sure that people really are able to kind of understand those kind of, you know, undefinables in work? They, you know, kind of, let's say it's a given that they have the knowledge, they have the degrees, the postdocs and whatever, but they may not know all there is to know about work. How do we get over that one? Lucy?
I would say that to have a buddy or a mentor, specifically within any network or location that are brilliant people. I mean, One Nucleus is a very good example because of the organization that they have, and also the fact that the members, and I think everybody needs to be nice to each other again. And I think that's how we're going to actually come out of this, is to give time to people and give back. You know, I've been very, very lucky throughout my career, the last 20 years, and the fact that I've had lots of lovely people who have helped me along the way, given me, you know, creative criticism. And actually it's really helped. But it is about having those people you look up to, and the ambassadors, and actually the people that you want to have a work ethic as they do, and what you can learn. So I think it's about us giving back, actually.
Yeah, really interesting comment there from Sarah. You may have all seen that there's a risk of this separateness between lab-based on-site teams become culturally separated from the office base. Will HR and management lose touch? Management losing touch? Well, there's a concept. So that's a really interesting question. And then Tony Jones, who I'm sure will be grateful for the plug there, Lucy, to One Nucleus, and more power to their elbow, is saying personal development, career progression happens not due to relationships in work, but the social interactions outside work and at school gates, etc. So we know teams can work remotely, but disciplines not requiring physical presence. It might be that the cluster effects to harness the social advantages become more important and therefore more localized. So sort of different sides of that particular coin. So, Christian.
I just wanted to pick up on the point that Thomas was making about the difficulty he's having of hiring in, as it were, middle management and above. When I worked for Pharmacia, it was quite a remote location compared to other sites. However, they had a how can I put it, a real culture of development and supporting people to grow into those positions. So in a sense, those leadership roles were always filled, or usually filled, I should say, from within. And so the promotion was at the earlier stage with the younger people, and an awful lot of training and support in the local community to bring people in. So, and that then led to a very strong culture. So I would say maybe the answer to your problem would be more to look inwards and develop and promote your own talent.
Well, there's
Yes,
a bit
of
of free
course.
consultancy.
Maybe one sentence to that. Of course, we know and we are facing these issues. So succession management and succession planning will be key for us in the future. To be honest, we have some challenges around this, but we will solve it in the future. And maybe I'd like to have a short comment on Sarah's comment. Is there a risk that lab-based on-site teams will become culturally separated from? I think, yes, there is a risk, but every organization, every company has to find their own solution for that. So if I can have a look in the future for Morphosis, we will have obviously we will have a kind of a hybrid model in the future where we have, I don't know, 2 to 3 days all people can go to the to home office to work remote, and being on site for also 2 to 3 days. So we are developing policies currently for that, hopefully time after COVID.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a really interesting intervention. So I'm going to come to Lucy, and at 9 o'clock, we've got 2 minutes, just a bit more as we wind up, and we've got an award to be presented. So that theme of what's the future look like, I'd be really interested in that, but go ahead, Lucy.
I think my worry is that there's a micro-political issue here in all of this as well. What happens with the political situation in the world? And that's going to play a lot of big issues with businesses going forward, specifically with the United Kingdom and the European Union at the moment and other countries. And how can we make sure that we continue having a global talent pool?
I don't overemphasize that, please. I lived through the time when there was a Cold War, and I met my wife in Poland behind the Iron Curtain. So, you know, if it's possible then, it'll be possible now. Honestly, yes, you're right. There is a chance that geopolitical tensions, and, you know, we want as many people from India and China to work, because we want the cleverest and the brightest people working in our companies. And I can assure you, they will find a way.
That's really optimistic and positive, Christian. So thank you for that. And I'm going to come to you, Ashley, and I guess yours will be the last comment. So what's your take? And it's unfortunate our hour, as we said, would go very, very quickly. But our item in your report, and you mentioned it, about the issues about making sure that people, you know, can access jobs, and it's not just about who they know and all of that, and how that this new paradigm or this new model might change that.
It's a really difficult and sensitive subject to tackle, and I hate to leave on this note, but it is doable, and I think it requires more work, both on a company's part, and part of what we've done with the skills analysis is to turn back around to these employers and say, this is what you've said. We have to work together to sort of address these things. So honestly, a lot of it is putting the ball back in the company's court, that you cannot just be focused on the talent that you need right this second. You have to think in terms of pipeline development. And even if your pipeline is strong, I guarantee you it's not diverse enough. And that takes work to make sure that you have a diverse talent pipeline. So for us, it's collaboration and partnerships. It's reaching out to populations and groups and organizations who we might not have worked with before, but bringing them into the fold to say the population that you represent is really important to all of our success. So it takes a lot, but it is doable.
That's a great note to finish on. So our 55 minutes, I should say, is up. So Jasmine's going to come in and present somebody with something to somebody. I don't know. Over to you, Jasmine. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, John, and thank you guys for sharing your expertise and knowledge. We're now going to move on to the second part of the session, which will be presenting the Life Sciences Inspiration of the Year Award. So if you give me just a moment, I'm going to rearrange the screen, and our sponsors, SLAS, are going to be presenting the award, and they've prepared some slides. So just give me one moment and I will sort that. I would just like to say as well, thank you to everybody that submitted a nomination, and congratulations to those of you who were shortlisted. So let me just open here we go. Wonderful. I hope you can see that all okay. Is that all right?
That's fantastic. Thanks, Jazz.
Perfect. Over to you, Christian.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Jazz. Maybe we could go on to the next slide. I'm representing SLAS, the Society for Laboratory Automation and Screening. We're a global not-for-profit association bringing together technology and life sciences scientists in all fields, both researchers and entrepreneurs. We're focusing on leveraging technology to help scientific objectives and discoveries. Maybe if we go to the next slide. We predominantly cater to the life sciences and technology audiences in a number of ways by hosting a number of global conferences, both in the US and Europe. We have an online educational portal. We also offer networking and special interest groups to keep people connected. We have an Ignite program, for startups and emerging technologies, where we have the ability to showcase startups and technologies at the conferences and give them opportunity to present their technologies. We have educational fellowship grants and academic awards, as well as the mentoring. Usually those are actually, the big educational award is quite significant. I think it's $10,000 US over 3 years for mostly graduate students. We have a very close tie between the industry, pharmaceutical industry, biotech industry, and the vendors, so that you actually have that opportunity for cross collaboration and cross fertilization. And supporting all of those efforts, we actually have 2 peer-reviewed journals, SLAS Discovery and SLAS Technology. On to the next slide. Yeah, so our big event usually has been the global and the European conferences. This year, with the pandemic, I think ongoing, what was going to be a hybrid event in Vienna, I think now is shifting more to online, as was the last global meeting. But it's certainly a key opportunity for people to interact, discuss the science, evaluate the new technologies which are coming in, the new companies. It can be an extremely interesting and exciting place to be. Go to the next slide, please. In addition to the global, which is predominantly US based, and the the European meetings, we have a number of topical symposiums. The Sample Management Symposium was predominantly in Europe. This year there will be a event in the US. And then also looking at things such as 3D hybrid biology and also AI-powered drug discovery. These tend to be topical, and so we can respond to what the needs are of the industry. That's what's coming up in the future for this year. If we go on to the next slide. Yeah, SLAS is proud to sponsor all forms of inspiration within the life sciences, and for this reason we're very proud to be working with One Nucleus to support the Life Sciences Inspiration Award for this year. And it's my pleasure now to announce the award winner this year. Next slide. And the winner is Claire Thompson of Agility Life Sciences. So I'd like to say congratulations, and maybe just pass over now if you'd like to say one or two things quickly. I know I've gone through quite fast. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, SLAS and One Nucleus. What an honour. I want to pay tribute to all the nominees and all of those who are shortlisted. It's so important that we engage with and inspire our peers, patients, public, and really inspire the next generation of future scientists. And you can see that theme is weaved throughout all of the nominations. We are the second most hated industry in the world, which really baffles me. And I think now that the spotlight of the pandemic is really upon us, it's the time for us to demystify medicines, really talk about the impact that we have in medicines development and make our messaging memorable for the right reasons. I couldn't have achieved anything in my career, and Lucy's already talked about this, without the support of the tribe of people that have helped me through and have added that critique and who I could go to as a sounding board when I had big decisions to make. But also I couldn't do anything. Success is not a solo sport without the wonderful team that I have at Agility Life Sciences. So really this award's for them. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Claire, and congratulations again. It's certainly a very well-deserved award, and well done to all of the other nominees. So that brings us to the end of our lunchtime session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Our next session starts at 3:30, and it will be our final session of the day. So if you have any questions as well for our panelists today that you didn't quite manage to ask throughout the session, I'm sure they'd be happy for you to message them via the conference app. Okay, wonderful. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I hope to see you soon.